It's Star Trek Day. We talk about how to do a cheap chroma key, and we farewell Ray Harryhausen. A Girl and a Gun, up next.
A Girl and a Gun, Episode 6, recorded the 9th of May 2013, Valley Ray.
All you need to make a movie is a girl and a gun. Come along and join the party while we stare at the sun.
Is there anything you would not do for your family?
Hello, it's Star Trek Week on A Girl and a Gun. Hello, John.
Hello, Phil.
You were the Star
Bastard, you didn't tell me I had to come into my Star Trek thing or I would have done it.
This is A Girl and a Gun, the show for filmmakers and content creators. I am Phil Moore, and as we record this, Star Trek Into Darkness opens today, and I'm here doing a podcast and I want to be out there watching the movie. And that's why I'm wearing my Star Trek shirt. This is my Captain Kirk
So when are you
shirt.
planning to go and see it?
Probably on the weekend with the kids. Yeah, so I'll have to
Are
wait
you all
till
going to
then.
dress up?
Well, I'll wear this again, definitely. I've got to find some more Star Trek costumes for them.
You know, it's always the guys in the yellow shirts who get killed.
No, it's the red guys.
It's the guys in the red
It's the
shirts.
red shirts that get killed.
Real worry.
And I
Never
could-
wear the red shirt.
I could have bought a red shirt. I could have bought a blue shirt and been Spock.
Right.
I bought a yellow one and I'm going to be Kirk.
We've got, and if I'd known I would have brought this in, we've got some towels at home
Yeah.
that a friend of ours made up and had sent to us. They got our names on them. They're Star Trek towels.
Oh.
And that's because in our bathroom, and this is going to sound really, really off, in our bathroom, the mirror has Spock in black. over the mirror.
What, embossed on the mirror or something?
Yeah.
You should have bought a photo.
It's weird.
So this is the show for geeks. This is the show for Star Trek geeks in particular. So, and we've got a little bit more about Star Trek coming up later. Before we kick into the news though for this week, there's a couple of corrections I wanted to make from the show we did a couple of weeks ago. Remember on our NAB show, we talked about Adobe, and I referred to the fact that they hadn't put simple like mute and solo buttons or solo and record buttons on their track. Well, they have now with the new version.
I mean, they had as a result of you commenting? Or,
Exactly.
Or it was, good,
It's
excellent.
down to me.
Very powerful on the show.
So the Creative Cloud Suite does have those features now, and we'll talk more about that a little later. The other thing I wanted to quickly correct was we talked about the movie, MOVI, which was that handheld Steadicam type rig. And I said, I imagine it'll cost a few $100 to $1,000.
How much were you out by?
It's $15,000.
Well, you know, it's a snip.
It's a snip.
We'll go out and we'll take 3. We'll have one in the studio for like next week.
Yeah, right. I think, honestly, a rig like that, and we've got a photo of it there, you can bring that up again. I would have thought 3,000 to 4,000 would be a fair figure. 15,000 seems a bit rich for that.
Yeah, but it's a pretty cool device, and it did a really, really good job of
Yeah.
nice, smooth tracking shots with what appeared to be not a lot of complexity.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying, well, I don't know. It just seems expensive for what it is, but it seems like a really good bit of gear, and a lot of people are going to buy it anyway.
Oh, it's of course, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, let's moving on to the news for this week. Breaking news. I'm going to rattle through a few of these very quickly first off. The Australian Teachers of Media, ATOM, they're running their awards ceremony again. So for those students, everything from primary up to professional filmmakers, there's categories in film, television, animation and multimedia, educational resources and games. The awards actually happen in November, but if you have a film that you would like to enter for this or find out more, just visit atomawards.org. If you have something you'd like to do. Certainly for film schools like ourselves, if you have something, or even high schools or primary students, if you want to try putting something into that. The Australian Writers Guild also are launching a new TV drama screenwriting competition. This is something they do every year. Writing for television competition called Think Inside the Box. The closing date for this is coming up pretty soon, 3rd of June, so you've got a few weeks left. And they're looking for everything from Offspring to Puberty Blues, Wentworth to The Straits. These are all shows that have gone through this competition at some point. Writers are invited to submit 2 to 3 page treatment outlining their idea for an adult television drama series or mini-series. If you want to find out more, awg.com.au, the Australian Writers Guild. Also, Film Victoria have had their budget increased. So the Screen Producers Association, SPA, are quite happy about this.
Sorry, can I just
Yep.
just say that again?
Screen Producers Association of Australia.
No, the bit before that. I thought I heard you say somebody's had their budget increased.
Yes.
My
Like-
God, that never happens.
It never by $8.5 million
Excellent. Where did the money come from?
from the state budget, for State Victoria.
Oh, this was in the state budget that was just announced.
Yes. So Screen Producers for Film Vic, they're happy that they've got an extra 8.5 from the state budget. They've allocated that for over 4 years to deliver a suite of support to Victorian screen practitioners, I quote here, in the areas of television production, animation and games industry development.
And of course, what that's going to do is it's going to create more jobs, and that's really vitally important to the industry.
Yes, we are produced in New South Wales. I would like to see some more money in this state as well. Happy for Victoria to have their money.
What's the chances we get the money from Victoria? I think it's probably like pretty low.
In fact, every state that's got a filmmaking background should have a bit more budget thrown at it for this because it goes a long way. 8.5 is not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it means a lot to a film production.
Well, if you look at where the big film production is, certainly, you know, like everybody knows about Sydney and Fox Studios, Melbourne has a pretty major film production industry and some really good facilities at Docklands. And then there'd be what, South Australia? Does South Australia have much facility?
I honestly
I mean,
don't
they've got
know.
the South Australia
They
Film
certainly have-
Corporation, which does a lot of investment.
Yes, and they have the film festival and exactly. So every state's got their government body for
Sure.
investing in this. And other news, which is not in our lineup, I dropped it, but very briefly, the Melbourne Film Festival's also received a bit more money, a bit of extra funding, not a lot, but some, so that they've helped them out as well. Our next story, again, piracy, copyright is an issue. One of the big things has been about torrents and downloading piracy. Netflix in the US, according to a recent interview, this is coming from Film School Rejects, their chief content officer, Ted Sarandos, has said, the best way to combat piracy isn't legislatively or criminally, but by giving good options. And what's happened is they've pretty much established that one of the side effects of growth of content is an expectation to have it. And I won't read the thing off here, but to say, if you see trailers online, if you see snippets online, posters, everything that promotes the film online, then you can't watch the movie online, you jump to a piracy if it's not available. And Netflix have proven that actually piracy goes down whenever they become common in a household, in an area. Video on demand. In Australia, we're talking Foxtel or something like that, or QuickFlix maybe if you're a subscriber to that.
Look, I think it's pretty much a human nature that if you make something easy enough for somebody to do, they'll take that course
Yes.
of action. If you make it difficult, they'll go and do something else.
Yeah, if you're promoting it online, and we had this discussion last week with the film that was deliberately giving away the first few minutes of the film online on a torrent. It's like, it's promotion. If you can make the film available and purchasable online, people will do it.
If it's easy enough and it's cheap enough.
And another story that actually represents this is in the publishing industry. This comes from The Verge. Piracy is not an issue after 1 year of selling DRM-free ebooks. So DRM, Digital Rights Management, has been taken off ebooks. So books that could easily be copied and pirated, they're not because they're easily accessible for those who read ebooks on a Kindle or something.
Sorry, just let me understand the mechanism. You're saying that the e-books are
Yeah.
being put up for sale and they're being made, what, cheap? They're just easy to get?
Yeah, so they're cheap. This comes from a Macmillan subsidiary, Tor Books in the UK, and they've said that it has seen no increase in piracy on any of its properties. So they're
Oh, as a result of taking the DRM off?
That's right. So they took the DRM off a year ago, which makes them easily piratable if you want to,
Right.
but they're easily purchasable as well. And they said
And affordable.
and affordable.
Yeah.
And they said it hasn't affected our sales.
I must say, I think this has been exemplified by the model that happened with Apple with the iPad. So I remember that when I was buying software for my Palm platform, frequently, like really clever software was also really expensive. But equivalently, really clever software for the iPlatform tends to be, 99 cents, $1, $2. It's like the cost of a cup of coffee. Why wouldn't I buy it and
Yeah.
be legal?
I've got a lot of music apps, in fact, for the iPad that cost a few dollars, and they're actually excellent apps. There are some more expensive ones.
Actually, the
though.
way it's gone now, you know,
Yeah.
like for $2.50, you really do expect a high level of excellence.
Just to finish this, the Tor books have said this has been met with significant support by the authors and customers. So people like not having DRM on the books that they buy or they sell, and it has not seen the same response from competitors. So other publishers are not following suit, and they're saying, look, it works. It doesn't affect our sales at all. So again, two stories there that relate that if you offer people what they want, make it easy to get and affordable, piracy is not an issue.
And not only that, it also makes it very easy to move the asset around on whatever device you want to watch it on or read it on,
Yes.
or whatever the experience is, and therefore you're increasing user satisfaction.
Yeah, and DRM, because
Experience.
it makes it that difficult, sometimes actually discourages sales. If I can't buy it on an computer and then it goes onto, I
Do you
can't get it on
remember
the
the old
iPad.
days, where, like the old PC days of software, where you get it on the floppy disk and you could install it on one machine, but then to install it on another one, you had to actually copy it back off onto the floppy and move it somewhere. You
There
know,
are programs that still try to do that. Only have one or two installs. Moving along. Sort of copyright related, Paramount and MGM are being sued for $23 million by the original writers of the first G.I. Joe movie, because they claim the sequel is substantially their work. Now, what basically happened is, once they did the first G.I. Joe, they asked these same writers, there's Paramount Pictures, MGM, Hasbro, and Dib One Venture Pictures are part of this suit. I'm trying to find the names of the writers here. Anyway, the writers who did that, they were asked to write the sequel and offer a story and a scenario for the sequel. They did quite a lot of work on that. As happens sometimes, they said, no, we're going to go a different way. We're going to get someone else to write it. That happens.
Yeah, sure.
What's turned out is that the sequel is substantially, they claim, what they pitched originally, and they're not credited at all.
I see. Yes, so it's not what was based on the original. It's actually somebody has done something, the work's been rejected, somebody else has come, they've turned in pretty much the same thing. The first group of people say you stole our IP.
Well, it's kind of like the companies involved here, they own the IP after all, Paramount Pictures, etc., and MGM.
Well, if they paid for it to be
And
developed.
if they paid for these writers to do the development and chose not to use it, that's what happens.
Yeah.
But they got their money for the work that they did do. But, and often you'll get writers on a film that are not credited, and they take the money and run basically, and they're ghost writers, and they come in and do dialogue tweaks or whatever. I think their suit here is, look, this is really what we wrote almost completely, and you haven't credited us at all. This
So
will end
what's the advantage of being credited? Like, do you then come in for a slice of the work later on?
Well,
are you actually being dispossessed of
These
something
are
by
very
not being
experienced
credited?
writers. They've been around a while and they've done other works. I'm trying to look in here to try and quickly, while we're talking, find the references here, and I can't see them straight off the top of my head. But they're very Midnight Run. They're working on the sequel for that. Four brothers. Elliot and Lovett are their names, are their surnames. So they're very experienced, well-known writers, so they're not like newbies.
No.
And what happens, I think, is a credit means everything. If you can get a credit on a film in whatever capacity it is, that's what counts, apart from the wage you might have received. And if this film is substantially their work and they're not credited at all, this will go to arbitration, no doubt, with the Writers Guild in America, because there's always a very complex arbitration system for this kind of thing. But it's rare for a writer to sue over something like this. Like, you got paid,
Yeah.
we own the
There must be
property.
something more in it.
I think it must be, they claim so substantially their work, it's like it's worth suing about.
Sure.
Anyway,
Sure. By
it's
the
not
way-
something we see a lot of. Yeah.
Just in terms of credits, I noticed something last night. So I watched the first episode of Deck of Cards.
House
which
of Cards?
came through- House of Cards, sorry, yes. Fabulous show, really.
I've got them,
really
I've
wonderful
recorded,
show.
I haven't watched them yet.
Well, no, great. But at the end, like, I watched through the credits, because we tend to do that. Listen to the music, watch the credits. And everybody got credited. But like, there was one scene where there was just like, I don't know, there's 15 couples dancing. They're doing a waltz at a function. All of the
Every
dancers,
extra got a credit.
what did they say? They said nothing. They all got credited.
House of Cards, which we talked about last week, and that was it there, which launched this week in Australia.
And it really is a great show.
And I've got 3 episodes sitting there waiting to watch them,
Yeah.
which I'll get to tonight, in fact. While people are suing everybody else, here's a turnaround. The creators of Nyan Cat and Keyboard Cat, these 2 little cat memes on YouTube, they are suing Warner Brothers over their memes being used in the Scribblenauts games, which Warner Brothers make. So within the game, you're seeing a screenshot there of Scribblenauts. Within the game, there's little Easter eggs where you click on it and it brings up the video of Nyan Cat and Keyboard Cat, which we might also see if you click through to those links there. And Warner Brothers, of course, they've not asked permission. They've not given, they're not paid for these. Both creators are suing Warner Brothers for copyright and trademark infringement, having not given the publisher permission to reuse their intellectual property. This is the kind of thing that people like Warner Brothers would sue about all the time, and now they're the ones being sued.
That seems fairly reasonable. Do you think that Warner Brothers has just failed to go off and get the rights for, you know, some bizarre reason?
It's either, and this happened a while ago with the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, where either someone thinks we can just do it,
Where the Tonight
it's not
Show.
a big deal, it's just it's out there free. There's Keyboard Cat now. It's just one of these memes, you know. This isn't a copyright issue, surely. Yes, of course it is. Or they figured we'll just get away with this because we're Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And these little guys aren't going to sue us. Well, they are. And they should. You know, if they want to value their copyright the same as Warner Brothers would, they should sue over
I
it.
tell you, Warner Brothers gets stung on this, that would be catastrophic.
It would be catastrophic. Is that a show title?
I could be very sorry that I said this.
Here's an interesting one. They have Los Angeles. This comes from New York Times, but it's around in a few different sites. You can have a script analysed algorithmically to judge how good it's going to be at the box office. So a former statistics professor named Vinny Bruzes, who's been dubbed the reigning mad scientist of Hollywood, what he does, for $10,000, I think it is, $20,000, he will take your script, run it through a team of analysts, compare the story structure, the genre of the draft, with those of released movies, looking for clues to box office success. So one of the things they say is like, something you shouldn't have in a film is bowling and bowling alleys.
What?
What I immediately think of the Coen Brothers film, The Big Lebowski, which is, there's bowling all over that. You know, but was it a hit? I don't know. Bowling, if targeting a demon, you are likely to have a much higher opening weekend sales than if it's summoned. So get rid of that Ouija board scene. So you don't summon demons in a horror film.
They have to turn up on their own.
They can target people, or demons in horror movies can be target people or be summoned. It's better if they just go for people rather than being called upon,
Right.
apparently. Little things like that. So they're analysing a script through a computer program, basically, and saying this has all the elements that could make a Hollywood blockbuster.
Okay,
or
now
not.
obviously if somebody can come up with that and have it absolutely work every time, then that's gold, because this is everybody's dream, to be able to know that you're on target, know that you're going to have the hit at the box office.
But don't you think that's sort of, where's the creativity gone? I mean, we're already being, big Hollywood films are already being accused of your formula to a large extent, and they are largely. There's a very clean structure to making a good, well-written film.
Yeah.
You know, and we can talk about that with our writing teacher in future episodes. In fact, we're going to talk about that. But this is like breaking it right down to really nitty-gritty nuts bolts and says, no, if you're going to have a horror film with a demon, you cannot use the Ouija board, you cannot have them summoned. But that's our plot, that's a core part of it. No, you can't do it. We
Well,
won't finance it.
okay. So the question there is: do you want to be, sort of humongously successful, or do you want to actually have a story?
Or do you want to be
Now-
original?
Well, actually, if I could be humongously successful and make a huge amount of money, I don't really care about being so original. I'll take the money. I'm happy with that.
There are some films where I would say, yes, look, this is a big film, we want to be safe, we want to make sure it ticks all those, but I'd rather
But here's
see
the
a bit
thing:
of originality in there.
if you think about what they're doing, so you say, look, how can that possibly work? What was that movie about the guys charting how baseball worked? And it was all about doing the analysis, and everybody went, well, that's a stupid idea.
The Brad Pitt one, Moneyball. Was
Yeah,
it? Yes,
Moneyball.
thank you.
And in fact, not only was it successful, because this was based on real life, it went on to be the process that absolutely everybody used, that you can do the statistical analysis and then come back with something successful. Well, if this guy has worked out how to do that with a script, good on him.
Well, one of the producers responding to this says, it takes a lot of the risk out of what I do. He evaluated the script for The Lincoln Lawyer, which was a hit in 2011. Everyone is going to do this soon, Mr. Steindorf, a producer, says.
Yeah.
The only people who are resistant are the writers. I'm making art, I can't possibly do this. Quote the writer.
Yeah.
If I'm making art, I can't do this.
He wants to be successful, and the reality is you can't have too many failures unless you've been really, really, really so successful that people will carry your losses for art's sake.
Yeah.
Everybody else has to make money.
Well, they also did this with Oz the Great and Powerful, which proved to be a reasonable success. Look, I think fine, if you're going for a big budget blockbuster, you want to cover your ass, basically. I hope they don't do it with everything, though.
No.
Anyway, let's move along. Look, honestly, there's two big stories this week, which I've been waiting to get to. One is Adobe have officially announced, as of last night, basically, the Creative Cloud. So we know a bit more details about this now. From now on, and this is released in June, so only a few weeks away as we record this, the Creative Cloud replaces what is known as the Creative Suite, version 6 now. There are no more version numbers as far as I can tell, because it'll update on the fly whenever there's an update, kind of like Google Chrome does. There's no more version numbers. You can only buy this on the cloud. There will be no boxed version. And the adoption for it, because it is available now, but it's going to completely replace, and they'll keep supporting CS6 for another year or two, and there'll be updates for that, but that's the last boxed official version that you can get.
And the last time they're going to talk about a version number.
Yeah, and because it's all going to a subscription now. So basically you buy, depending on what model and how many programs you get, it's going to cost about $50 a month for a full price for the suite, and you can pay that annually and you get a bit of a discount.
I don't actually see how that's going to work.
And for students like us, the price goes down to about $15 currently for students and teachers. So, but why don't you think that will work?
I want version numbers. I want to know that I'm about to get something new. I want to know that somebody has done all this development. They're about to release something that I will want to glom on board to. This applies to people who don't already have the product. So if you don't have the product, you're not already paying for it, and something comes along that says, now here's something you really do want because we've made some changes.
If you do have the product currently, they've got obviously discounts for the upgrades. And if you're on version 6, it's quite affordable.
But it's not about the money. It's about actually, do I want this thing at all or not? So it's like Windows Vista. Okay, well, I'm going to fall apart for having even mentioned that. But it was a complete disaster. And as soon as everybody found it was a complete disaster, nobody wanted to buy this product. If they'd been on a subscription model, everybody would have been forced to take it.
You're quite right. Well, one of the
people who didn't have it would have waited, would have wanted to know they could wait until a completely different thing was announced that came along.
Well, this is one thing that possibly is a fly in the ointment here, is very often you get a program where the update adds a bug. And the word goes around, do not get this update. Wait till they fix the bug and get the next update.
And if it's pushed to you...
And if it's pushed to you and you're stuck with it, it could crash the system and you could be out for a couple of months, potentially. There's very many of these cases in these kind of professional products where the update is actually inadvisable sometimes. But if it's pushed to you and you don't even know it, yes, it could break everyone's computer for a while. That's one of the cons, absolutely. But I think the subscription model is a good one for them. Microsoft have done it already with the Office, and Apple is sort of doing it as well.
That's really successful. Yeah. Everybody's thrilled about that.
And I, as a reviewer, having reviewed software for many years, I haven't actually received a boxed copy of review software for quite a few years now. They just give me a download link. And I always sort of say, can you give me the box? I like to have it in the cupboard just in case I need to reinstall it or something. Honestly, it hasn't been a big deal. Usually by the time I need to reinstall it, there's an update and I get the updated version anyway. There's two kinds of people I would say that have a problem with this, with the subscription model. People who are pirating it, because it makes piracy. People who are getting their free copies. And that does affect a lot of small businesses and students and think, how am I going to get it now until I can afford to get it? Sure.
Yeah. Sorry, what's the problem here?
Well, no, you should be buying it after
Absolutely.
all. No, the people who are pirating it, and people in small businesses who basically, once they buy the version and they stick with it for a couple of years, they don't upgrade to 6. They're still on 5.5.
Or 7 or 12 or some other number. Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine for them for several years. And there's people that don't want to have to upgrade. And spend the money on the big... And that's because every year there's been this big purchase cycle you've had to do to get the new box. And you're out $1,400 or whatever it was, right? I think that won't be an issue for them. The main problem that I think this is actually fixing is, and we have this problem here, we're running CS6 currently in our classrooms.
Right.
There are students at home with 5.5, and the version, once you upgrade to 6, it won't go back to home. You can't downgrade and continue working at
Right.
home. You know, so it gets rid of that disparity between version numbers. If everyone's using Adobe Premiere Pro, for example, on the Creative Cloud, you'll be running the latest version no matter what. Everyone's on the same version.
Okay, so I can see what's going to happen here. Phil and I are going to have a discussion offline. We're going to be knocked down fisticuffs. We'll come back next episode and we'll tell you.
It
how we
seems
got
like
out of
I'm
this.
generally in favour, you're generally opposed.
I'm generally opposed against the man telling me anything.
Right.
I want for exactly the reasons you already said.
Well, yes, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the market takes to it, but I think this is inevitable one way or another.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Find out.
the big news, before we go to the big news this week, there's a little video here I want to show. Markerless facial motion capture demo. All of those of you out there doing screen capture, motion capture, I should say, motion capture for video animation, let's have a look at this video. This is where the technology is going. So as you can see here, normally you might have dots on the face or markers for the cameras to track. There is no tracking here. He's got a camera obviously in front of him there, but it's just watching his face, his movements, and in real time applying them to the 3D model in the
So the
background.
camera is actually able to analyse which components in its field of view represent his facial features, specifically his lips.
And if you go back to the
that's
beginning of that
and
video-
he's got a beard, hasn't he?
Yeah, there's a bit of stuff. Well, I think that's on the model. But if you go back to the beginning of that video, it shows us a wider shot on the model.
Yeah.
And you can see him pulling some facial expressions here and
No,
how
but
it just follows.
the facial actor has a beard, so it's actually generating something, despite the fact that he's got a moustache and a
Yes.
beard and other facial features that you might think would be disruptive.
Yes.
Or is the trick that you have to grow a moustache and a beard in order to use this? In which case, it's not going to work well for women.
It may have been synced specifically to his face initially before they ran this, but once you've done that syncing,
But look at that. That is
Yeah.
very, very good tracking.
exactly, it's just watching the movements, watching the muscle
the
movements.
eyes.
And as you say, under the beard, how does it know quite what the muscles are doing sometimes?
No, but he's doing some pretty bizarre things there,
Yeah.
and it's just doing a great job. I mean, the one on the right is entirely believable, and the one on the left is pretty weird.
Right, so apart from the eyes, the whole uncanny valley of the eyes, if you could video the eyes at the same time and put the actor's actual eyes into the model, like they did in Avatar,
Is that what they did?
yeah, oh, yes, part of the time, some of the time.
Must have been a lot of
You actually
actors
film the
wandering
actors.
around feeling very uncomfortable.
I mean, if you saw the Avatar motion cap, they had cameras on their heads filming what they were doing to get the exact expressions, as well as trying to do the mocap, and they did a combination of the two to get them all happening. But that's seamless. That looks
It is,
really good,
yeah.
and that looks like, without having to put dots all over your face, very cheap and affordable and quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, as I say, the big story this week, and I've been holding together to this, is we say farewell to Ray Harryhausen. So, for those who don't know, Ray Harryhausen was one of the pioneers of of visual effects around the world. Stop motion animation. He worked with Gordon Willis on King Kong. He then later made Mighty Joe Young. Most famously, of course, was Jason and the Argonauts, The Seven Voyages of Sinbad, Clash of the Titans, all these films from the 60s that have inspired so many people working currently in the visual effects industry. That's Ray Harryhausen there at the top. If we go to the next page, there's a little tribute there that someone put together quite recently, which I'd like to show. There are so many tributes to the man out at the moment, but here's one that I found which was short and quite appropriate.
Taken from the 1963 film Jason and the Argonauts, it features some of the earliest and most noted examples of stop-motion animation. The pioneer behind this was Ray Harryhausen. Born in 1920 in Los Angeles, the visual effects animator made a career of injecting fantasy into fantasy films. He brought monsters and mythological beasts to life, sculpting, then shooting clay models frame by frame, movement by movement. They culminated in elaborate action sequences. Harryhausen created more than 20,000 objects in his body of 17 films, including 3 Sinbad movies and his most successful, the 1981 Clash of the Titans, featuring a fearsome Medusa. Those works laid the foundation for today's industry, with movie titans from George Lucas to Steven Spielberg leaving tributes on social media. For an animator who made a trademark in creatures that caused mayhem, Ray Harryhausen is remembered by friends for his gentle disposition and brilliant humor, a one-man genre who inspired a generation. Gerald Tan, Al Jazeera.
Right, so there's lots of tributes. This happened yesterday, our time, and straight away there's lots of people. You'll see Peter Jackson referring to him and things like this. I remember seeing Jason and the Argonauts, which I have on Blu-ray currently, and as a kid watching the famous skeleton sequence, which we'll show in a minute actually from that film. But as a kid for me, the one that really impressed me was Talos, the giant metal man that was protecting the treasure. And the moment he turns his head and wakes up, it's like, and it comes to life, and quite literally, there's a model that just comes to life. It was frightening.
Harryhausen was 43 when he did that work, and I remember, like, I was a kid. I was sort of barely able to sit in a car at a drive-in, and I found that movie absolutely captivating. The thing is, it stacks up really well, even today. And what Harryhausen was able to do was recognise some of the subtleties that you need. So, compositing had been done before Harryhausen, and stop motion photography had been done before Harryhausen, but what he did was ensure that every shot was correctly matched, that he knew what the foreground was going to look like and the background was going to look like, and as he went through and shot every frame, he took the trouble to make sure that they were perfectly cinematically balanced.
And getting these, like, as in the skeleton fight, live action actors matching with an animated thing. And the thing that he really brought to it was the personality and character he was able to imbue in these creations, which are just little plasticine models.
Yes, yeah.
You know, not since King Kong had anyone been able to do that, and he did it so well.
But very, very clever stuff. His father actually contributed a lot, making the armatures that went into the figures, like to keep them together. So it's, if you've got all this clay or whatever, you know, you still need some sort of internal skeleton which allows you to move it step by step and hold that position while you want to shoot it, and then there. It's very, very tricky stuff.
And it's long and tedious stuff to do this kind of stop motion, like days and days, non-stop.
I did a 30-second stop motion. It wasn't even claymation. It was just a stop motion piece. And it was very simple, with a guy sitting in a car and driving for like 30 seconds. And it took us 3/4 of a day to do that one frame at a time.
He was a master of this stop motion. Let's just finish this discussion with a bit of the skeleton fight from Jason and the Argonauts.
And you just look at that standoff.
And he's animating each of those figures individually, after all. In CG, this would be relatively simple nowadays. This is well before computers came into the game.
But of course, the actors...
And there's your foreground, background, you know, the matching as you were talking about, the compositing.
And the actors in this would be working entirely with nothing in front of them.
Exactly.
Reacting to a whole heap of nothing.
I remember seeing, while I was researching this, an older tribute to Ray Harryhausen that Peter Jackson did, where he showed some of his childhood films, and he replicated this scene on the rocks at a beach of him sword fighting an invisible skeleton. He never got around to doing the skeleton because he couldn't work out how to do it. Peter Jackson, as a teenager, he could, and he showed this as a tribute to Harryhausen. One day he'll get around to finishing his version of this scene.
We just look at this, you look at the number of motions that have to be coordinated, because basically everybody is doing something that is to them unique. So,
and then the actors do their acting, and then he adds, based on what they're doing, he made the skeletons react to that, and it's just so seamless.
And so the impact that Ray Harryhausen had on all the people who followed him can't be measured just by what he did in his movies, but the fact that he then went and inspired other people to do even greater creative things.
Exactly. So what he did was basically start what became CGI animation for this kind of live action and compositing animation with live action, all of that kind of stuff. Brilliant stuff. Valet to Ray Harryhausen, we'll miss you. What I'd like to finish with, being Star Trek Day, and the movie opens today, There's a wonderful little ad here. It's actually a commercial for Audi. But we have the two Spocks here in this ad. Let's run that. That is our news of the week. Okay. What we have now, in fact, is a special little package that our students have put together. The producers of this show have put together for their view on how to best do a battle sequence, how to produce the epic battle sequence. Let's run that now.
So, today we're going to investigate 5 key things that turn a good fight scene into an epic battle.
Prepare for battle!
First, we have a well-written story. Without a structurally well-written story that demonstrates both characters and their development, one can never really understand what the commotion is all about. It is without a surprise then that some of the greatest movies that we see today were in some way inspired by well-written novels.
Why did you judge me? Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law!
Law!
2. Destination and lighting. There is nothing worse than bad lighting than a plain and boring destination for a fight scene to occur. Lighting and detail is very important to achieving the desired effect from characters and scenes. These scenes are carefully chosen, and often hours are spent on them to make everything look just right. Lighting then emphasizes the look and the feel, giving it an extra important dynamic. Oh, let's also not forget wardrobe and makeup.
That was a mistake.
Number 3. Diversity in camera angles. The audience wants to be involved in the fight taking place. Truly, the use of tracking shots, wide shots, close-ups on the characters showing their struggle, and just as importantly on the bystanders and their reaction, contribute a lot to the scene itself.
All I ever did, it's your choice.
Number 4. Sound. An emphasis must be made on the quality of sound in music. Usually, it's the track that's played during the fight scene that is often remembered by the audiences. Good musical composition can go a huge way into creating suspense and a more interesting fight. Number 5. Choreography and acting. And last but certainly not least, it's the choreography and acting involved within the fight scene that makes it so memorable. Sometimes, big production companies will spend weeks if not months making sure that their actors are prepared. So there you have it, 5 key things that turn a good fight scene into an epic battle.
Stay where you are.
So that was put together by a couple of our students. Their idea of how to put together a proper battle sequence.
Battle sequences are so hard. We were going to stage one here in the studio for this episode.
Yes.
But they came and took away
We
the
just
swords.
ran out of time and we couldn't find the swords. That's right, New Zealand had all of them.
I didn't understand that. No, it's all right. Don't go there. Don't go there.
What we're also going to do now, we've got one more in our current series of tutorials with Paul Howard on cinematography, and we're going to run that now. Hello and welcome to this next episode in our series on cinematography with Paul Howard. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Phil.
Now, the last few eps we've been talking about the F3 in particular, which we have here at the college. But my question is, you know, there are so many cameras out there. Everybody wants to work on an Arri Alexa or a Red, but, you know, are they the best tool for the job sometimes?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it depends a lot on...
We've got a few examples here on the table with us. We've got the 7D, which is the brother to the 5D Mark III, which everyone's familiar with. Everyone, you know, DSLR type cameras. There have been films and things shot with this which look fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It does have its limitations and its advantages.
Yep.
Even the Hero, we've got a Hero, the GoPro Hero 2. There is now a Model 3 out, which we don't have yet. And they definitely have their purpose as well, their use as well.
That's right.
But they all have their advantages and limitations.
Yep.
So how do you choose the right tool for the right job?
Well, I think it depends. It starts with the discussion with the director, and then very, very quickly after that, it's a discussion with the producer. Because it's all about money and art meeting commerce. I've heard many a young filmmaker, and this always astounds me as a DP, saying, oh, look, our film would have been awesome if we'd had a Red camera. Or if we'd been able to get the Arri Alexa. I want to shoot with the Alexa. In fact, I had someone call me the other day about a film and they said, look, we don't have any money for you, but we're going to shoot on an Alexa. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Why?
What's more important, the camera or the person who's going to wield it?
And I might be different to other cinematographers in this respect. I mean, I love shooting with big toys that cost a lot of money, like everybody. But do they suit what you're trying to achieve? You know, are they going to help realise the dream of the director? I'll give you an example. You've got a certain budget, certain amount of money, and someone's saying, I want to shoot 35mm for that. Okay, great. Where's our location? It's that white box over there. That's the unit, that's the flat we're going to shoot in, you know. What kind of actors do you have? Right, they haven't had much experience. Why is it? Well, I can't afford this. I can't afford that, I can't afford this. But you're putting all your money into the camera. And in my opinion, they're all just tools that suit budgets. That's what they are. And we're so lucky these days, more so than ever before, that we have this enormous array of tools to choose from that produce all sorts of different images, from iPhones to the F65, you know, and all of them in between, so that if you have an idea, you can match that idea to the budget and shoot something. And because the most important thing is being able to tell the story. And of course, knowing how to tell the story is one thing, but having an awesome camera at your disposal is not going to help you tell that story if you're sacrificing the art direction, for instance. It's just not going to do it.
If all the money's going into the camera. Well, let me play devil's advocate. I mean, could I shoot anything decent with something like this or something like this? Why would I choose this over a cinema camera, you know, the high-end Sony cameras, Panasonic cameras, or a Red or something like that? Why would I choose this? Because it's $3,000, you know, plus a lens.
Yep.
You know, there are certain limitations with depth of field and focus issues like that, which we know, we've worked with it.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of this? Why would I choose it? Just because it's cheaper?
Because it'll suit the task better, I think. If it suits the task to use the big camera and you've got the dosh for it, then do it.
Because these cameras take longer to work with as well.
Sure, and this one, as we know, you can mount on the front of a New York taxi and away you go and you get stunning images. One of the most impressive films I've ever seen was shot on an iPhone, and it was shot in many cities all around the world, and it was just beautiful. And the images suited the aesthetic, and it told the story really well. I think it's about telling stories. I don't think it's about
the tools.
I don't think it's about the hardware. But what you can do, because I think we've always thought about it the other way around. If I have the best camera in the world, or if I have the most awesome bit of kit, you know. I think that if you go story first and figure out, if you don't have any money, how can you make it? Because it's more important to tell a story than it is.
See, this is unusual. Coming from a cinematographer, and you'd think, normally they'd say, I just want to get with the best camera possible. And you're saying, I don't care what the camera is as long as it suits the story and the performance, it suits the production and the requirements of that.
Look, I've stood on a bunch of sets with a 35mm camera, and the art direction is terrible. It's just terrible. And I'm thinking, why are we spending so much money on this camera when we could be shooting on a much less but a beautiful art direction. Because there's a saying between cinematographers that many cinematography awards are won and lost between the art direction. And I think that's true. I'm not saying, oh, just shoot with this and then spend money on everything else, but gee, you could in some respects. I know, I just saw a feature film shot with a 5D in a war zone, and that just blew me away. It's to Hell and Back.
Right.
I think it's called The Hell and Back. And the dude worked it out so that he had a little focus wheel. I don't know whether any of you seen it. You should see it. It's an awesome film. I thought it's, he had a little focus wheel on it. He worked it out so the whole thing just ran, a little Steadicam on it. It was so real that I thought, man, how did they do this? It's like they couldn't have been actually out there. And this was a war photographer that ran with a unit in Afghanistan. And I thought it's just too real to be real.
Well, we had that same experience. We shot a film with our students in New York last year, and we could have taken this, but we thought, no, it's too conspicuous. Let's just go with this camera.
Guerrilla style on the streets of New York, no permits.
Central Park, Times Square, no one even noticed us.
And you can.
Yeah.
You can do that stuff, and I think it's more important, like I've said before, it's more important to tell a story than it is to spend all the money on stuff, that isn't necessarily going to make it a better story. If you have an awesome story that's engaging, it doesn't matter what it's shot on. And so many people prove it these days. That's my rave on. That's my rave on the tools these days.
Choose the right tool for the job and the right tool for your budget, basically.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. It's a really exciting time to be a filmmaker, I think.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome.
See you all next time. So that was the last in the current series with Paul Howard on cinematography. I'm actually planning, I don't know if I should announce this quite yet, but I'm planning to have...
You know what happens when you pre-announce something and then it never happens?
Should I? I don't know if I should... Well, maybe I have to now. The next series that we're planning is with one of our writing teachers, Carol Seegers. So we're trying to get him in here, and we'll do a whole series on those. For the writers out there, the screenwriters, we'll get him in to talk about screenwriting. Okay?
Good idea.
We now go to, and I think we've got a question lined up, have we? Pick My Brain.
Pick my brain.
And we have a video question again from one of our students, and I don't know what this is, so let's have a look.
How would you construct a DIY green screen on a budget, cheap as possible?
That was a bit hard to hear, but it was how do you do a DIY green screen was the question? Can you confirm that with me? Yes, on the cheap, doing an on the cheap DIY green screen.
Well, firstly, some green is actually quite useful.
Green or blue?
No, it's not a green screen if it's blue.
No, that's a whole different subject.
Actually, the whole question is why would you use green as opposed to blue? And
Yes.
why do we use? Do you know why we use green and blue?
What you tell me.
Okay,
I
I'll
do
tell
know,
you.
but you answer this one.
And the answer is they're two colours that really don't form a colour component of human skin. The whole point is to be able to not interact with your skin. You can change your clothes. You don't have to have something that's blue if you're working with green, or you can have something green if you're working with blue, but you can't change your skin.
But they're very specific tones of blue and green that are used.
Well, they're very saturated. They're very specific saturated colours.
And there's a special paint you can get for if you're going to paint a wall.
Chroma key blue and chroma key green.
Exactly. And so if you're going to do it on the cheap, if you happen to have a white wall, like the side of your garage or something, you could just paint that chroma key green and maybe use that, and you're just using sunlight to light the back of it. If you're inside, if you're in a studio, there are some cheap green screen options that you can buy. There's the ones that wrap up and that flip out, which are really nice and portable. They're great if you're on the road. And you can use, and if you're just doing a tight shot like my shot at the moment, you can fill the frame, or just, you only have to fill the frame, just me. And the rest of it is you can mat out. And there's a full-on studio green screen. You don't have to go to that extent. That's a full cyclorama there, what they're showing now.
Yeah.
You can buy cloths that simulate that effect though, that psych effect.
The trick is always going to be to make sure that you've got enough light on the background to be able to lift it out, to be able to key off it properly. Because if it's not bright enough, then you won't get a nice sharp edge. But if it's too bright and too close to the talent, you have the problem of light spill off the blue or off the green, for instance, onto the back here, and you'll just see sort of edginess. It's very difficult to get rid of. Green is probably worse than blue in that respect because blue doesn't look too bad. Green just looks so yuck. But green is a much brighter colour and therefore it's much easier to get a clean key with green.
It's also, if you've got a camera that's shooting in 420 sampling, green's a better colour to be using on those kind of cameras. If you're 422, 444, it doesn't really matter that much. But as you say, yes, it almost doesn't matter as long as the green's filling the area that you want to key. It's got to be lit well, nice, even and flat, enough separation with the foreground action to avoid that and everything else. And if you put that into After Effects then, it should key very easily.
It should.
And even in the new After Effects, the new Creative Cloud Adobe After Effects, there's, if you can't get the green screen working, there's new rotoscoping tools to get around that, almost that simulate the keying that you would do within a rotoscope effect, if you're in a situation where you just haven't got green.
So anyway, there's the answer. You know, how can you do it simply? Well, go and get a can of the correct paint, but make sure it is the correct paint.
Or you can buy some really cheap ones, which is like $100, $120, something like that. They're relatively affordable. The trick is lighting it well, as you say, John. Yeah. That's our show for the day. Any final comments on that?
No, in a future episode, we're going to talk to you about fabulous things you can do with food. We'll talk about fabulous things you can do with ferrets and gerbils.
And I know you're joking, but actually, we should do a piece on catering for film sets. Food is vitally important on a film set.
Food, actually, a crew marches on its stomach. So if you feed the crew, you'll get a good result. If you don't feed the crew, you can pretty much guarantee that by about day 4, nobody's going to be interested.
So the message for this week is, go see Star Trek Into Darkness, and farewell, Ray Harryhausen. That's what